Welcome to another episode of Exercise Matters with me, Randall Cooper.
And me, Mick Hughes.
Support for today's episode comes from Premax Performance Skincare. If you're active, you focus on strength, endurance and recovery. But what about your skin? Sweat, friction and the elements take a toll. That's where Premax comes in. High-performance skincare made for high-performance people. From recovery creams to anti-chafe balms, massage creams to exercise-specific barrier creams, we help your skin go the distance. Keep your skin as fit as your body with Premax. Available now at premax.co.
And support for today's episode also comes from Learn.Physio. Health professionals, are you staying ahead of the game? Learn.Physio brings you cutting-edge education from world-class experts in sports and musculoskeletal medicine. Online courses, hands-on practicals and expert resources, all backed by the latest evidence and designed to fit into your busy schedule. To be your best, learn from the best. Get started today at Learn.Physio. Oh, good morning, mate.
Good morning, mate.
Since we chatted.
It has. I hate to say it, but I've missed it. We're in 2026 now, and as much as I like talking to you, I actually like really diving into these topics, and just having a little bit of a hiatus was nice in some ways. In other ways, it's like, come on, let's get this going again. I'm glad we're back on.
I feel a bit duller. I feel like my brain's just sort of regressed a little bit. So it's nice to sort of, start training that grey matter again. Because, I agree. The couple of weeks was nice, but after a while, I'm just like, I'm getting a bit itchy here. I probably should, do some reading or, do some research for the new podcast. And it's nice to be back on the airwaves.
Now, we don't want to go too deep because people are here to talk about exercise, mate, but you did kind of set the scene saying how you're going to Canada for the Christmas break. So from a guy from Tamworth and Townsville, how did you cope with the cold?
I struggled. It was look, we were very well prepared. Mrs. Hughes, Carly Hughes, was very well organised. She made sure we had all the layers and we were appropriately dressed for every day out. But it was definitely a change. One day was minus 25 degrees, felt like minus 30. Most of the other days barely got over minus 10, where we spent a bulk of our holiday. So it was a very big temperature shift, and then we arrived back into Townsville on New Year's Eve and sat on about 35 degrees. So about a 60 to 70 degree temperature swing from our last day to our first day back. So
and you noticed
it was an amazing holiday.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I didn't do much. I just kind of stuck around home, which was nice. Actually got quite a bit of exercise done, which I was pleased to do, and a few things done around the house, but pleased to be getting back into it now. Yeah,
no, it's nice. It's find that 2 week. I think that the sweet spot for a holiday and a break is about 3 weeks. 2 weeks, you feel like you want a bit more, and anything beyond 3 or 4 weeks, I think you sort of start getting a bit bored, and it's like, let's go again. So it's good. It's good to hear that you had a good time, mate. Rested up, and we're already halfway through bloody January. So don't blink these days, mate. Time flies. No. So I'm glad to be back chatting and talking shop with you, though.
Now, I've got exciting news, and also for our listeners, because I know that you're such a fan of the Norwegian 4x4 method.
Yes.
And just before Christmas, Professor Jan Helgerud emailed me and said that his book, The Norwegian 4x4 Method, is now in English and available on...
Very good.
And available on Amazon and some other platforms where you can buy books. So that was a very popular episode, and I know that it lives rent free inside your head quite often as well, Mick. So now it's in English. You can read it again if you like. So there you go.
Exactly right. Well, I like to think that it's. I saw a popular online personal trainer recently talk about the Norwegian 4x4. I can't claim that he came across our discussion in our podcast and all of a sudden started talking about it himself. But this guy's got millions of viewers, and he's talking about how he uses Norwegian 4x4 too. So however he came across it, I'm glad there's some people talking about it. And importantly, I'm glad Jan's book is now available in English. And the more people know about it, the better. So, amazing.
Yeah, excellent. We might get Jan on in future season to kind of follow up on things, because it is such that high intensity stuff's still very topical at the moment. Now, it's the new year, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who listen in who start the new year and say, I'm just going to get better at what I do. I'm going to eat better, or I'm going to exercise more, or I'm going to just be a better athlete. And that's why I thought we'd kind of kick this kind of new year off with a discussion on what we call food first performance nutrition. So we are probably a little bit guilty where on this podcast, we've highlighted things like beta-alanine and protein and caffeine and all the kind of the magic in inverted commas, supplements that are out there.
Yep.
But you and I both go to a number of conferences, and I did go to the Sports Medicine Australia conference down in Hobart last year. And now, because I don't have my kind of focus on like knees and ACL as much as I used to, I actually mix it up a little bit. And I went to some nutrition talks. And yeah, the thing that I found really interesting about the nutrition talks was there's a number of these sports dietitians that were talking about a food-first approach. And it's like, it's a term that's kind of been familiar to me, but it never really sunk in until I sat in the audience and listened to them talk about what a food-first approach was. So I thought, we've got to talk about this on the podcast because I think it will balance out some of the other episodes that we've done well. And I also think that from the sports dietitian's perspective, there's so much hype and focus and interest on the 1%ers.
Yes.
The creatines and the proteins, etc. But getting your diet right is just the fundamental building block for most athletes. So I thought A, would kind of dig into the evidence today, and also B, I've got a terrific guest who's a long-term friend and colleague of mine, Lisa Middleton. So I'll introduce Lisa more properly in a minute. But yeah, so I think it's a timely kind of discussion that we have this early in the year, so people can start eating well.
Yeah, great choice, great topic, and I think we probably should all be sort of looking about how can we improve the 99%ers better in our lives rather than focus on these 1%ers. I often talk to my patients about, look, unless you've got your sleep sorted out, got your your diet and good whole foods sorted out, and you've got all this kind of stuff. If you're still struggling for that little bit of performance, then you start looking for others and those little 1%ers. So I think. For me, I think this will also sing into my biases a little bit and reinforce some of the communication that I give to my patients as well. So I'm looking forward to this chat and hearing from Lisa.
Well, let's start off with a definition of what food-first nutrition means. And I've lifted this from one of the articles that I referenced in a minute. But let me start again. Food-first performance nutrition refers to a strategy that prioritises obtaining all necessary nutrients for athletic performance and recovery from whole foods before considering isolated nutrient supplements. So I think that the most important thing there is that you go to food first. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily anti-supplement, but you're going to try and get as much out of whole food as you can. So I think that's an important kind of distinction to make straight off the bat. I want to highlight just a couple of research papers before we kind of get into the comments from Lisa. Now, the first one is, I've mentioned this in the past on this podcast, but it's a great one. It's a free one to download if people are interested in this stuff. And it's a few years old now, but it is the IOC consensus statement on dietary supplements and the high-performance athlete. It's quite a wide-ranging paper published in the International Journal of Sports Nutrition and Exercise Metabolism in 2018. So there's a few key points in this paper that are relevant to the discussion today, and they make these points in the paper, so I'm going to summarise. The first is supplements deliver marginal gains compared to food and training. So the IOC is really quite clear. Performance is primarily driven by training quality, recovery, sleep, and adequate fueling. Supplements only provide small gains once those basics are in place. Point 2. Most athletes don't need supplements if their diet is adequate. A well-constructed diet can meet the needs of most athletes, including many elites. The idea that top athletes take everything is just a myth. And Lisa will back this up when we kind of get some comments from her as well. Number 3 is only a few supplements actually have strong evidence. Now, we've talked about a few of these on the podcast, Mick. So the ones we've discussed already are caffeine, creatine, beta-alanine, and the other two that the IOC has in there is nitrate, so things like beetroot juice and that kind of stuff, and also bicarbonate, which actually is a little pet topic of mine. So maybe we'll kind of look at sodium bicarbonate down the track one day. But again, they're only small kind of marginal gains. Number 4 is medical supplements should be evidence-driven. So supplements like iron and vitamin D, be guided by blood tests. Don't just kind of say, I'm feeling a bit flat or I don't feel great. My iron must be low, so you start taking iron tablets. It can really mess with your mineral balance. And also, probably the most important thing for the elite athletes is that food first is also is a risk management strategy. So we've all seen athletes who have taken supplements and then got banned for something because something nasty's been in there. And they go, I just didn't know. And even for like everyday people just like you and me, even though we're not going to get WADA tested, for me doing my okay, swim over somewhere or whatever.
Yeah.
I still don't want to take rubbish. I want to make sure that, like what I'm putting in my body is the real deal, and you'll get that with whole foods, not necessarily with all the supplements as well. So that's
Well, how many cases of people getting under what they pay for? Like they go and buy a supplement online. I think that's the other kind of thing there. Probably leans into what you just said, is that you want to, if you're going to spend money on things, at least with fruit and veggies and whole foods, you know exactly what you're getting. Supplements, it's a bit of a
or you're getting more than you bargained for, i.e. there's, anabolic agents in there, that kind of thing, particularly with the protein powders. It's like, this stuff's amazing. Look how big I'm getting, but you wouldn't pass the test with water. Okay, so the second study is one that was published in 2022, and it's by Close and colleagues, and this was also in the International Journal of Sports Nutrition and Exercise Metabolism. And it's called Food First, but not always food only. Recommendations for using dietary supplements in sport. So they've got a few key points as well. And again, I'm just summarising this paper. Food first doesn't mean food only. So I made this point kind of at the top that, there is a role for supplements in an athletic diet, but make sure that you're doing the best you can with food first. There are clear situations where food is insufficient. So it might be that, if you are wanting to get the benefits of creatine, as we discussed in your episode on creatine last year, it can be really hard to get that out of the diet unless you're eating enormous amounts of meat, I think it was. So, and the same kind of goes for vitamin D. There's a sun-safe culture, which is very good.
Yes.
But a lot of us aren't getting enough vitamin D, and it's hard to get that out of your food. So taking a supplement is indicated at certain times, but also other times such as high training loads, or you've got a low appetite, or you're traveling to like a country that's, doesn't have great food hygiene or whatnot. Yeah. So that they're opportunities to kind of up your supplements at that point. But they do make the points probably, and this is something that Lisa will talk about also, is that supplements should be planned and cycled. So they should have a clear purpose. They should, the timing of them should be intentional, and also the dose, and reviewed over time, and not just taken continuously without even thinking about it anymore. And Lisa kind of says this as well. It's like, use it as an adjunct, but don't take protein powder or creatine necessarily every day for the rest of your life just because.
Yes.
Alrighty, well they're the two papers, and the reason I wanted to kind of bring Lisa into the conversation was that where a lot of athletes get stuck is they get stuck kind of translating this evidence kind of into real life activities. So this is where Lisa will kind of bring some colour into the lines. So just introducing Lisa, she's one of Australia's most experienced sports dietitians with over 25 years working in high performance sport. Lisa has advised some of the country's leading teams, including multiple AFL teams, elite netball, basketball, rugby league, football program, and currently works with Melbourne Footy Club and also Basketball Victoria and their high-performance athletes. She's the author of Eat Right for Your Life and Superfood for Performance in Work, Sport and Life. She's a sought-after media commentator and lecturer, and a former president and fellow of Sports Dietitian Australia. Lisa is the real deal. And not only
a lot of runs on the board.
She's very experienced as well. So the first question I asked Lisa was basically, what happens, what do you see athletes kind of missing? Often supplements don't matter if the basics aren't right. So what were her thoughts on that?
Well, I think people forget sometimes that you can get significant performance impacts just through your food, not even worrying about supplements. And I do a lot of work with young athletes who are often looking for the magic thing to help them to, get bigger and stronger, that sort of thing. And if you're not getting your diet right from the start, just making some dietary changes can have more of an effect than a supplement's going to have. So if you're making sure you're fueling really well before sessions, so you're maximising your energy levels, so you're going to be able to push yourself as hard as you can in those sessions, then that's going to have a massive impact versus any supplement. So, and then recovering really well. So in terms of your foods, thinking about, often people are going for protein supplements after exercise or after gym. You can get the same quality protein that's going to have exactly the same effect through eating, having a food source organised for after a gym sessions. I think sometimes the protein supplements come into play because of convenience. So sometimes someone will think, well, I'll just take my shaker and do my protein drink and then I'm done with my protein. But if you think about a protein drink, and the other nutrients that might be in there, there's not a lot compared to if you have, you're organised and you've got, some leftover. You might go home straight after and have some, leftover chicken stir fry and rice or something like that. It's still going to be, for most people, generally, including athletes, that's going to be enough for your protein. It doesn't matter as much how quickly it's absorbed. It's more about getting it in and your total amount over the day.
Yeah, so essentially audit your diet to get going with. I mean, you'd think it would make a lot of sense, and when it's said like that, it's like, of course you should. But I don't think a lot of people do that. I think they go, wow, bright light, social media, that looks really cool, I better take it.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think if anyone was really honest with themselves, and I think the challenge is with a lot of busy people, like obviously the teens is a different group to sort of work with, a very active, highly active teen who might struggle out of bed and struggle to get to school, and maybe just struggle to get a decent breakfast in. And I think we talked about this in the protein podcast, that if we want to get more protein for muscle building and muscle synthesis, probably the lowest hanging fruit is to make sure your breakfast is probably kind of front ended with a bit more protein than sort of maybe some of the other meals through the day. So 100% agree, and that applies to both the young, busy, teen or teen athlete, also to, the everyday mum or dad, or, 20, 30-something-year-old who, maybe skips breakfast or underplays their breakfast needs. So I think, just look at what you're currently doing and see, first and foremost, could you sort of, make some better choices with your daily whole food intake before you sort of spend that $150 on the next available supplement.
Yeah, and I think that ties in nicely to planning of your food, and that's a point that Lisa makes down the track a little bit, so we'll get to that. But I did touch in with her and ask her about the myth, I suppose. Do elite athletes take everything, and are they using a food-first approach?
Yeah, and I think that the way you've worded that question is really great, that it's not necessarily anti-supplement. And especially I've worked for a number of years with elite athletes and elite sporting teams. So it's not that we don't recommend or don't encourage supplements, but we certainly look at how we can get most of the nutrition that we need through our food. So rather than relying on, a supplement, and sometimes, young athletes come in and they want to, take every different thing that they can take, but it's looking at first, what are you getting through your food? And sometimes you can get most of the things you need and you don't need to take a lot of supplements, if any supplements. And there's a lot of elite athletes that don't take any supplements at all. Sometimes we think that elite athletes take all sorts of, they're, have a mix of different things that they're taking every day, but a lot of them do like to look at their food and get as much as they can through that.
Yeah, and I'd back that up with my own personal experience. Like I don't always kind of dig in deep, to what my athletes over the journey have been eating, but I kind of know, and they do mention it, and very rarely are they kind of talking about all the pills and pop things. They're usually talking about whole foods. They're talking about unbelievable green smoothies, about, like restaurants that have got super healthy, great options, that type of thing. And I think that for us, we can learn something from that again. Yeah. So the next point was, I asked Lisa, is how do you decide whether a supplement is actually appropriate for someone? When is a supplement indicated?
Yeah, and I think when we working with athletes, in my role, I have the ability to look at an athlete's diet and look and see exactly what they're getting and make sure that we can look for gaps and see what they need. And I think that's the thing. Sometimes not just elite athletes, but anyone who's active and wanting to, you might be wanting to improve your performance in the gym or doing a fun run or an Ironman, or you have some goals. We all want to try to look at everything we can do to improve our performance. So sometimes that can mean looking at, you might hear that someone else is taking something and I want to try that, but you've got to look at your individual situation and what's going to work for you. So there's a few around at the moment that seem to be, the flavour of the month or the day, and creatine's a big one. I get asked probably by, nearly everyone I see seems to want to take creatine for different reasons. So it can be for muscle, trying to put on weight, or there's all the interest in the brain, effect of creatine on the brain now as well. But we have to think about the why a person wants to take that and the timing of when they take it as well. That's a big thing for athletes, is often they might, what we do in at the elite level, we look at, we cycle nutrition over the year. We also will cycle, depending on their needs for training and competition, but we also will cycle supplements and use different supplements at different times of the year that are appropriate. So that's one thing. It can be some supplements like creatine that people think, but, my friend's taking it, I should take it, but it may not be appropriate for them at that particular time. but there may be a time of the year that it works for them. So it's really not, look at refining what your goals are and thinking about your goals and how your nutrition helps those goals, and whether you need extra supplements and which ones are the best, how much do you need, the timing, the dose, all of that sort of stuff. Because sometimes, especially with athletes, some of their supplements, if you get that wrong, it's not going to do anything anyway.
She teased a little bit about creatine, and so I wanted to dig in a little bit further with her. So I followed up and said, basically, should creatine be for everyone?
So if you're someone who's looking to take creatine, you're wanting to build muscle, you're generally not going to be able to get enough just through your diet if you're taking it for a specific, if you're doing the proper dosages and the timing and getting that right and you've got a particular goal, you'd really need to be getting the higher doses through a supplement rather than just through your diet. There was some interest looking at vegetarians actually, and vegetarians whether they get enough creatine and their creatine levels are quite low. So there's also talk about whether vegetarian athletes should be taking creatine supplements just to get their intake up to a regular level, because most of your creatine will come from animal foods. So so it's interesting. It's looking at the reason why you're taking a supplement. That's another example. It might be someone just trying to get their levels up to a normal level versus taking higher doses that are going to have a performance impact. So creatine's one of those ones you really do need to take the higher dosages rather than just from food to see that true impact.
I'd kind of take that as a yes. I know that we had a couple of comments after we did that creatine episode that you did, kind of saying, the physical and muscle kind of benefits of creatine are well established, guys. But like, I'm taking it now for the mental side of things as well. Where are you at with creatine these days? I think, like when we spoke about it last year, you were taking some. Are you still on it? And what are you thinking about it at the moment?
I love her points too, by the way, like just the individualization of everything too, and not trying to keep up with the Joneses. I appreciate that, because we even think about in the creatine podcast topic, we talked about the benefits were largely for strength and power based athletes, as opposed to our sort of longer endurance based athletes probably didn't see the same bang for buck. So if you're a long distance marathon runner and your best mate's a 400 meter sprinter, you're comparing apples versus oranges there, that you probably shouldn't be able to try and keep up with your mate. Yeah. But for me personally, I probably should, for a few different reasons. I actually I've stopped taking protein in the short term because I just felt like my protein intake was enough, and I had put on some weight. And I was just trying to figure out, just elimination, through process of elimination, what was causing that extra bit of weight gain. Was it the extra protein intake that I was having every day? Was it creatine and some of the weight that I was holding? There's the anecdotal evidence that says if you start taking creatine, you'll hold water a little bit more, which will add to your weight gain. I've stopped in the last month. I've sort of started stripping everything back to try and figure out where was this extra bit of weight gain. I still probably haven't figured it out, but I'm going to come back to creatine. Could be the chocolate. Could have been the overseas holiday. A few different reasons. It's what I've found though. By a process of elimination, it hasn't drastically reduced my weight either. So I'm just sort of still trying to figure out. So I think the first step back of reintroducing back things into my diet will be creatine for those cognitive gains. Because I certainly felt sharper when I was taking creatine. That was the thing that I did feel was that added benefit, was the sharpness and the mental clarity. I was definitely seeing some gains in the gym positively, but I think the mental side of things was also too a big positive for me too. So at the moment, not taking it, but I will start taking it again in the next month or so.
Okay, you are
absolute guinea pig.
You are our live experiment. So. I'm pleased you're doing it. I'll just follow the evidence. But I did want to dig in with Lisa just about a few of the, I suppose, the popular things to do. And creatine's obviously very popular at the moment. Protein's the other one. And we've all seen it where people are walking around with protein shakes straight after, if they've worked out. And I thought, well, if we're taking a food first approach particularly to protein, and people do want to ingest protein straight afterwards, what did Lisa think about that? So this is what she had to say.
Well, I think people forget sometimes that you can get significant performance impacts just through your food, not even worrying about supplements. And I do a lot of work with young athletes who are often looking for the magic thing to help them to, get bigger and stronger, that sort of thing. And if you're not getting your diet right from the start, just making some dietary changes can have more of an effect than a supplement's going to have. So if you're making sure you're fueling really well, before sessions, so you're maximizing your energy levels, so you're going to be able to push yourself as hard as you can in those sessions, then that's going to have a massive impact versus any supplement. So, and then recovering really well. So in terms of your foods, thinking about, often people are going for protein supplements after exercise or after gym. You can get the same quality protein that's going to have exactly the same effect through eating, having a food source organized for after a gym sessions. I think sometimes the protein supplements come into play because of convenience. So sometimes someone will think, well, I'll just take my shaker and do my protein drink and then I'm done with my protein. But if you think about a protein drink and the other nutrients that might be in there, there's not a lot compared to if you have, you're organized and you've got, some leftover. You might go home straight after and have some, leftover chicken stir fry and rice or something like that. It's still going to be, for most people, generally, including athletes, that's going to be enough for your protein. It doesn't matter as much how quickly it's absorbed. It's more about getting it in and your total amount over the day.
We've got Stuart Phillips coming up later in this season, who's a world authority on protein and also sarcopenia. We're going to have an episode on sarcopenia down the track. And I've listened to a couple of podcasts from him about protein, and he said we, as research group, are probably guilty of putting out there that you need to ingest all this protein straight after you've worked out to kind of get it, to get the benefits of protein. It's not true. As long as you're getting enough protein in during each day, it doesn't really kind of matter that, you're taking in that hour of the first window. And I suppose for me, like I still like to kind of have like a good meal is protein heavy after I've particularly done a strength session. I know that the research doesn't say that, but for me, just kind of completes the package. Do some strength training, kind of get a good healthy meal with some protein in it, and it works well for me. But I think Lisa's point is that, like if you are at a gym and then you got to shoot off to work, or, or you kind of exercise outside and you can't get home for 2 hours and you need something, protein shakes are great. But you can get the protein in with whole natural foods if you want to, but you have to be planned.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think, like some people are probably just creatures of habit, and look, it's nice. It's reassuring, I guess, probably for a lot of listeners, that there's some window of optimal kind of, I guess, protein resynthesis has probably, been debunked over time. But for some people, it's probably one of those things that, there's certainly no harm in sort of looking to get that, protein-based meal in after, whether or not they, truly need to, obviously is up for debate. But some people probably just found in a creature of habit process where they're just now in the routine and the rhythm of having it straight after a workout. So certainly no harm done there. But I guess that's the thing. If you don't get a chance, it's not the end of the world. It's not as if you're going to lose, a couple of kilos off your bench press, or not get your PB next week, if that's what you're shooting for, if you miss that one meal. So good insights there.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed in thinking about this episode is how important planning is. I know that if I sit down on a Sunday afternoon and I think about everything that I'd like to eat during that week, and particularly, breakfast, lunch, if I plan it, I go to the supermarket, I go and get everything that I need. My diet for the week is really good. But when you're really trying to chase your tail and, like you're behind, the fridge is empty and whatever, that's when my diet tends to go out the window. So I kind of asked Lisa about the role of planning and whether that makes a big difference to things as well.
Yeah, so that's really the only way you're going to get your nutrition right, is to plan ahead. So as we know, other things get in the way, and, if you haven't got your dinner planned that night, sometimes you might have to work late, or you can't get to the shops or whatever reason, and then you can end up going for takeaway and stuff like that. So just being organised, and it doesn't mean that you have to, some people will meal prep. You see a lot of people that go to the gym and they'll prep their meals for the whole week on a Sunday. You don't have to be that full on with it, but it does mean doing a bit of planning with your shopping, knowing what you're going to cook different nights, thinking ahead. And if you're someone who has specific needs, you'll need to think about, well, how much carbohydrate am I getting at this meal? What training am I doing that night or the next morning? So it's all that nutrition cycling, I guess. So over a week, you might want to push, certain nutrients like more carbohydrate around your higher intensity or longer sessions, and then you can go lower on different days depending on your goals. So, some people have body composition goals as well, so you've got to tie those in. So, having and it doesn't have to be some people like a set 7-day plan around their training and have it all organised and counting it to the gram, but that's not for everyone. Sometimes it can be a more loose kind of plan where you just think, okay, I'm having a higher carb meal this day. I'll make sure I've got ingredients for that, and yeah, planning it ahead. Otherwise, for most people, it just doesn't work if you don't plan it.
What do you think about those comments, Mick?
Yeah, I'm all for planning. Really important part of, just from our own personal experience here at Hughes household, we have got a meticulous planning each and every week. It works, like we probably don't go to the same extent that we're meal prepping, like mad on a Sunday afternoon, but we have, a once a week shop. We know what we're having for dinner every week. We know what the kids are having for lunches every week. Like it just goes, that little bit of planning and effort that probably takes maybe, like half an hour to an hour, maybe a little bit more, I guess, depending on your needs and your family needs. But just that probably mental time to figure out what do I want to eat this week and how am I going to have it? And then obviously the physical time of putting it all in together. Like it pays dividends. It's one of those things where, it's a good return on investment. That time spent to sort of map it out, it is just going to be crucial, like to your performance goals or your training goals. Yeah, all for that. I think the haphazard sort of, live each day as it comes and, eating on the fly. It's always easy just to sort of, get that takeaway meal or, ruin your diet, a crappy lunch or a less nutritious option. It's easy for those sort of habits sneak in. So yeah, all for planning.
Yeah, good. While we're digging into kind of particulars, I did ask Lisa about the medical kind of supplements, i.e. like iron and vitamin D versus the performance ones like creatine and protein, excel, beta-alanine, etc. So she reinforces really kind of like what we spoke about at the top of the episode, and it needs to be evidence-based. You need to kind of take it because you've got a deficiency rather than it's just more the better.
Yeah, well, we tend to use a lot of different we consider a lot of different factors when we think about supplementation. So vitamin D is an interesting one because sometimes we can do a blood test for vitamin D, but I've done a lot of work with basketball, and being an indoor sport where they don't always get as much exposure to the sun, that can mean that, and especially some of the darker skinned athletes who may not have, the darker your skin is, the less effect the sun's going to have for you with your vitamin D. So for some of those athletes, we might just say take a vitamin D supplement and, not even do a blood test. But generally things like iron, we'd always do a blood test. This is the other thing too with supplements. You have to be careful just thinking, I'm a bit tired, my iron might be low, I'll just get iron from the chemist. Because some supplements can affect your absorption. If you're having them in high doses, they can affect your absorption of other minerals and other things. So you throw everything out of whack. So unless you know your iron level is low, you really don't want to be taking an iron supplement just for the sake of it. So usually we'd like to have some evidence that your level is low before we'd recommend taking a supplement. But it's interesting in sport because we have sort of two types of supplements. We'll have supplements that are recommended to treat a deficiency, and athletes can get deficient. They're more likely to get deficient in iron. The iron's a big one that we monitor, but we do monitor the vitamin, depending on the type of athlete, the vitamin D levels and those sorts of things. And then we have other supplements that are more performance enhancing supplements. So we have still the clinical medical type supplements that we can treat a deficiency. And then we have, this other side where it's more the performance enhancing ones that are probably more like your creatine, for example, alanine, those sorts of things. Yeah. But usually it's a blood test. Ideally, we want to be identifying that there's an issue before there's a major issue. So even like with stress factors, for example, you want to be able to try to be looking at diet and managing training loads and looking at supplements and things before there's, a real issue that's going to affect training ability and can lead to injury. So that's what we try to do ideally is, some athletes will have some, regular blood tests and screening for some of those things like, vitamin D, iron.
You ever been deficient in vitamin D, Mick?
No, but Mrs. Hughes has. She's works in a lab, and she a couple of years ago went working in Melbourne. When we lived and worked in Melbourne, she was stuck inside. She was identified with really low vitamin D levels. You get that middle part of the year, winter, where it's low sunlight as it is in Melbourne, plus the joys of working in an office with artificial light. Yeah, she was tested and found some really, really extraordinarily low numbers of vitamin D. So that was going to be one of my kind of comments there. It's it's probably not. Sometimes probably could be your geographical location, not just the areas where you play your sport or even race you are and how you absorb skin. It could be where you are in the world and how much sunlight you get in the world, and compound that with do you work in an office with crappy access to vitamin D every day. So that would certainly be one of the more common things we'd see. I think that's probably underappreciated. for those that live and work down south.
Yeah, I know that Lisa kind of said that she's got probably a lower tolerance just to kind of popping in a vitamin D supplement for the right people. But I was surprised in myself a number of years ago because, as you know, I'm a swimmer. I swim in an outdoor 50-metre pool 3 or 4 times a week. I've also got property, so I'm outside, on property all the week. I was vitamin D deficient. Like when I swim, I was. I'm not swimming in a burqa like I am. I'm just in like my little Speedos and outside in the sun the whole time. It's probably a visual that most people don't want to conjure up at the moment, so I apologise for that. But I got vitamin D deficient. So for me personally, it's like always get the blood test, just because you could surprise yourself. Because I was, I'm like an olive skin kind of guy as well. So it's like, how could I be vitamin D deficient? But the numbers don't lie. So. Yeah, get the test, know what you're dealing with, and deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we had iron deficiency, and also too, our daughter's a really busy high-level gymnast, and just went through a period probably this time last year as well, just tired. As parents, you sort of start thinking the worst when your kids are constantly complaining of tiredness and soreness, and we knew that she was busy with gym, but GP visit, checked her bloods out and found that she was iron deficient. Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with what Lisa's saying there. Supplements that you can buy online, don't take. There's obviously those are the two big ones that you just don't take haphazardly. You just want to make sure you get the right confirmation that you actually truly need it before you start, spending money on things that you don't actually need. And that actually can be harmful to you if you take it in the wrong amount of dose.
Yeah, agreed. Now carbs can be a little bit of a dirty word at times, but when you talk to the sports dietitians, it's definitely not. And if you've got any endurance kind of component to the way you do exercise, then carbs is essential. But it's a food first episode, so we're talking about just like whether people should be thinking about taking like a whole food option for when they need carbs, particularly when they're kind of training or competing, versus just the energy gels. So I was really interested in what Lisa had to say. I didn't know which way she'd go. This is what she had to say.
It depends a little bit on the type of training sessions you're doing and intensity. So for a lot of, if you're looking for carbohydrates during exercise, so for example, cycling, and you're cycling at if it's say a longer ride where you're not cycling at as high intensity and you've got a chance to eat solid food, then definitely you can get the equivalent carbohydrate through normal foods. And a lot of athletes prefer to do that. They don't want to go for the processed supplement type carbs. They prefer to get it through natural foods. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. Like you said, people make little balls or little rice cake things, and there's lots of things you can do. I guess the where the gels come in is if you're performing at quite a high intensity where your gut's not going to cope so well with solid food. So I guess if you think of marathons and things like that, where it's that longer running, if you're doing it at a high intensity, you're probably not going to feel like eating a banana necessarily, although some people can have solid food. But that's where those gels, it's more a convenient way of getting the carbs in. Or for people that have really high carb needs during their exercise or competition, they might need to look at those more concentrated sources as well.
I followed on with Lisa about because a lot of people who do take those gels or indeed want to take whole foods like whilst they're exercising. Cycling is a little bit different because you can stop at the cafe for half an hour and have a latte with your friends and then a muffin as well. But the ability for people to be able to kind of train their gut to either, whether it's gels or whether it's whole foods during exercise. So this is what Lisa had to say on that.
Yeah, definitely. And you can practice it in training, practice having different things and see what sits well and might not sit well. And some things might sit better. Sometimes it's hard to replicate a competition day exactly, but it's trying to work out what works for you. It's the same with athletes who say, I can't eat breakfast before I train. You can definitely train yourself to do that, and it might be different. Yeah, it's just trying different things to see what works. So different things work for different people.
I'm glad she said that because I know with my swimming, because mainly I swim kind of in the morning and I generally just have a black coffee before I swim because I don't like much in my gut. But when I have spoken to the dietitians about that before, they'll say, listen, if you're going to go and do a race that's over half an hour or 45 minutes long, you should get some more carbohydrates kind of in you. And like last night's dinner may not be enough. So I had to do that. I had to train my gut and make sure that, I wasn't kind of wanting to repeat breakfast again whilst I was swimming at 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning. But it can be done. It's a good point.
Yep. Yeah, no, great points from Lisa there. It's real good tips real practical tips that are coming through, which is really, really nice. I'll have a morning gym session, and I'm kind of like in that boat where I'd rather just have a black coffee before I go to the gym, rather than have a full breakfast before meal. I'll be sort of having that breakfast, when I get home at 6:30, 7 o'clock, as opposed to trying to sort of chug something down before I go. But yeah, each to their own, and whatever sort of fits into your schedule, I guess. But I think that's some of the key messages I'm hearing here is you certainly don't skip on those opportunities, get those whole foods in when you can.
Yeah, the last question I asked Lisa was about recovery food. And we touched on protein shakes earlier, and whether the protein shake is kind of enough and whether there's alternatives there. So I asked her to flesh that out, and also, what can you eat as a whole food for recovery?
Yeah. So if you're not far from home, you could go home. Sometimes people don't feel like eating a too heavy sort of meal straight after they've been to the gym. So you could just make a smoothie, like do a smoothie that's got milk and some yogurt and put some berries and things like that in that are going to be good for recovery and anti-inflammatory. And, you can put some oats and things like that in if you want as well, if you need it. So trying to do something like that is going to give you a lot more nutrition value. So you're going to get all these other nutrients that will help with your recovery, whereas sometimes like a whey protein is not necessarily going to give you any other nutrition. Or you can have a meal. So if you feel like having a meal at that time, then you can definitely do that, depending when you go to the gym and the timing when you come back, or try to have a snack that's got some high quality protein in it. Something that's easy, and it's, again, everyone's different in terms of what they can tolerate.
Yeah, it got me thinking about kind of sometimes the way that I structure my exercise as well, because I will, particularly with when I'm doing strength, I will make sure that basically I'm going to do strength before I have something to eat. So it's not like I'm doing strength and then there's a big window. So I like to kind of eat straight away. So that's why I get up at 5:30 in the morning, do my weights between kind of 6 and 7, eat breakfast, and then my day really starts from there. So what about you? How do you go with timing your food and doing post-workout nutrition, Mick?
Yeah, I definitely aim to have that timing. I've probably moved away from being really rigid and having to have it within half an hour to an hour. Yeah, some mornings I must admit I may struggle to get reasonable sized breakfast in just through the busyness of the day and getting kids out the door and that kind of stuff. But I'll certainly aim to kind of fill in my lunchtime with an ample amount of a mixed bag of protein and carbs and all the good things. And obviously at dinner time too, I'm probably be a bit guilty of probably having dustbin dad, they call me here at home. So I'm probably sometimes exceeding the recommended daily dosage of some of the protein and fats and carbs at dinner time with getting rid of the other kids' plates. So I think over the course of a 24-hour period, I'm certainly not lacking, which has probably led me into this discovery of what's causing some of this extra weight gains. Yeah. Anyway, I in terms of my workouts, I tend to make sure I get it in when I can. But I'm certainly not as pedantic about it as what maybe I've used to be.
So we're on the run home here, and I just want to really, for me, kind of looking into this and speaking to Lisa and reading the papers, there's really two things that kind of pop out me as a summary. The first is just get the fundamentals right with whole foods before chasing supplements. Make sure, just audit your own diet. Make sure that you're kind of getting everything you need and get as much as you can out of whole foods as you can. And then you're fine-tuning it with supplements at the end. And to do that, this is point 2, you need to plan. You need to plan well. You need to get food in advance. And consistency beats perfection all the time. What about you, Mick? What did you have any kind of takeaways from this from your perspective?
Yeah, same to be honest. The planning's key. I really like how she sort of really made a big point of that is to make sure you map out your own specific needs, and if you are going to really get better at whole foods, we probably just need to sit down and probably have a good think about how your week looks, and how that is going to fit in. And also too, I love that percent, looking at the 99 percenters and make sure you really dial down and nail the whole foods and trying to get, better choices of whole foods into your diet rather than sort of, fill it up with a whole lot of expensive supplements that are, look, for some people, they'll probably give them those competitive advantages from time to time, but I think ultimately, you got to go with what's best for, I guess internally for you, and we know whole foods are going to be better digested and the evidence is there to support that whole food approach. So yeah, I love her chat about that. So yeah, they're my big take homes too.
Well, we're off and running again in 2026. So thanks for that, Mick. What's up next week? It's an episode that you'll lead. What do you got in store for us?
Mate, we've got an interesting topic on runners and foot strike patterns. So we've actually it looks like we've got a bit of a series, talking to you before. We've got a couple of running style and running theme podcasts coming up. So, and some that potentially maybe even, not butt heads, I guess. I wouldn't say, they definitely argue with each other, but I think there's a couple of different perspectives on runners and, and how they can get the best out of their running program. So really, really good listening for the recreational runners out there that want to try and squeeze a little bit more, I guess, some better performances into their week. So yeah, I've interviewed Professor Irene Davis, who's an absolute superstar in the running space and a physical therapist and very big name in the running world. Yeah, she was wonderful to chat to. Sometimes I wish I had more time to, pick their brains. But yeah, that's the episode that I'm tackling in the next one. So stay tuned for that. It's a ripper.
We do like to try and keep these episodes brief, so I better wrap it up. So that's a wrap for this episode of Exercise Matters. If you enjoy the chat, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your mates. A quick disclaimer, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical or individual advice. Always seek guidance from a qualified health professional for your specific needs. Big thanks to our sponsors, Premax, high performance skincare for high performance people, and Learn.physio, world-class education for health professionals. Catch you next time.
See you next week.